Dr. Paul Hutchison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity of speaking on this very innovative psychoactive substances bill. And I'd like to acknowledge and thank, first of all, the Honourable Peter Dunn, who has pressed on with this bill. I was under the impression that it was initially the Law Commission, but he has told us this afternoon it was through the United Nations Committee. And I think the main point is that this requires the manufacturers to show that these substances are of minimal risk. Might I also acknowledge and thank the officials and the Select Committee, who has generally worked extremely well to achieve a very good result. And finally, might I thank and acknowledge the submitters. There were powerful submissions from right around New Zealand. I remember specifically the Mayor of Timaru coming up and saying that in her community this was the #1 problem, that there were 4 or 5 shops, dairies, selling these substances to young people. They even texted young people when a new high came in and they'd come to the back door and sell them. From Manurewa, we had 3 submissions. They were absolutely outraged the way that High Zone was carrying on business in that community, next to a doctor's community surgery and next to a shopping centre where lots of young people went. And since that submission, I've been rung up by them to tell me that they've just heard that a truckload or plane loads of substance have come from Pakistan, have landed in the wharves, the airport in Auckland, and they are basically loading up prior to the date when this bill is enacted. And I think that is of great worry, and it's a warning to our officials to make sure that they rigorously pursue the regulations associated with this bill. And certainly I'd like to acknowledge Cam Calder for all the work that he's done, along with Lewis Wall in supporting the Manurewa community. And of course, the individuals who have been devastated by their children involved with cannabinoids and various other legal highs. In my own community, Waiuku, the supermarket owners there have set up a campaign to reduce these substances, and 3 of the 4 dairies have already spontaneously said, no, we're not going to have anything to do with them, and I think that's very good. I'd like to comment on the basic purpose of the Act, which indeed was to regulate the availability of psychoactive substances. And it was one of the amendments of the Select Committee that was supported by submissions to include to protect the health of and minimise harm to individuals who use psychoactive substances. And I think that was very much in line with the alcohol legislation, with other such legislation that we have in New Zealand, and I applaud that. The Expert Advisory Committee has some major tasks ahead, and their working will be pivotal to this bill. They, of course, have to advise the authority. Their experts include those in pharmacology, toxicology, neuroscience, medicine, and several others. On this occasion, it has included Bob Kerridge, and he has been absolutely clear about his opposition to animal testing, and I acknowledge that. The offences in this bill are very clear. To manufacturers, they are high, up to 2 years jail and $500,000. We had a considerable debate about those under 18 and over 18 for possessing, and undoubtedly we also had advice from the police who were clear with what they wanted. I think we've come out with a good steer in this bill, that infringement notices are there, but that they will not be criminal, particularly for young people, and the police know well that they want to ensure that rehabilitation is the way to go rather than down the criminal track. I also just wanted to make note of the fact that indeed many places will have restriction on sales, not only shops, grocery stores, supermarkets, garages, and in fact any other place or premise specified or described in the regulations, because already I understand there's been a suggestion that video stores may try and sell these things. But more importantly was the Select Committee putting in clause 61A, which is relating that a territorial authority may have a policy relating to the sale of approved products within its districts, similar to the alcohol legislation, and I think that's very useful and will be welcomed in Manurewa. Finally, animal testing. Firstly, I want to just comment on the advice from the Clerk of the House, because it was very clear initially on the 26th of April 2013 and then later on the 5th of June. The Clerk of the House confirmed the initial advice that amendments prohibiting testing psychoactive substances on animals were beyond the scope of the bill, as the bill is about approval and licensing of the substances, not their testing. On the 5th of June, the office said they can advise that an amendment to preclude the use of information derived from animal testing or psychoactive substance products in support of any application for approval may be in order. May be in order. I absolutely reject what Kevin Haig has said regarding the process and will not resile from the position that we took on the advice from the Clerk of the House. Secondly, the advice of the Expert Advisory Committee. They came to their recommendations through a consensus process, and to quote, they decided to come to a consensus position followed by a majority and minority report if consensus was not possible. No minority report was needed, and it was on the recommendations of the Expert Advisory Committee that we came to an amendment which satisfied, ostensibly, all members of the Select Committee. The Advisory Committee must ensure that any preclinical or clinical tests that relate to a psychoactive product do not rely on any research, testing or teaching that involves the use of an animal if suitable alternatives exist. What is absolutely clear is what the Select Committee, the Expert Advisory Committee then came up with, because they said this, Mr. Speaker: the committee considers that it is not currently possible to completely prohibit animal testing, and some animal testing may be necessary to provide data to support human research in order to allow the legislation to deliver its primary aim. The committee recommends that some animal testing be permitted, and I think that's very, very important to underscore. Mr. Speaker, the final point is this, that having looked very carefully at the international best practice scientific community, there is no question that animal testing, though it should be minimised, is necessary. Undoubtedly, rigorous testing is required to demonstrate minimal risks, particularly when tens of thousands of users are young adults and adolescents. And I very much hope, Mr. Speaker, that the Labour Party, given that its current leader, Mr. Shearer, is also their science spokesman, will support an evidence-based approach and support his health team. Not to do so, Mr. Speaker, I believe would be utterly irresponsible. So just to end, Mr. Speaker, there is no question that the major purpose of this bill is excellent. It is to regulate psychoactive substances and to protect the health of and minimise harm to individuals who use them in this country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Clear cut.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the opportunity to speak in the second reading of this bill.